It's your host, your boy, George Mckay, back here on the Ringside 5, episode number 2. And I'm here with my PIC, the one and only voice of reason, Michelle Araujo.
I like that introduction. PIC is chef's kiss.
Yeah, it is chef's kiss. PIC or PIP, partner in podcasting, PIP.
We both know if you ever... You know what? We're not going to put that in recording.
We're not going to put the PIMP?
No. We're PIC.
PIC. Okay, PIC. Well, me and the PIC are back, and we're doing another Ringside 5, top 5 managers. That's right. We're going through the history books. Again, I have picked one that may be questionable, but I enjoyed said manager, and I'm not gonna hold back. I thought he was great in a lot of ways. Especially sometimes he had makeup, which was fun. It was nice. Very cool. And in getting through the stages of the managers, I went back and watched a lot of the early night Saturday night main events.
Ooh,
and they were great. No, they were great. But anyways, you have the distinct honor of having 1, 3, and 5 this week. I only had to work 4 and 2. So without further ado, I turn it over to you for number 5.
Oh, let's give it up, guys. So for number 5, I much like you in our last episode.
You picked Kevin Federline?
No, I did. I picked like a favorite of mine. Let's say.
Kevin Federline was my favorite, but I just enjoyed the...
Yeah, it was something that you enjoyed, right?
Yeah, it was.
And I very much enjoyed Miss Elizabeth when we did have her. She was very widely regarded as like one of the greatest managers in WWE history. She brought the elegance and the grace, and Macho Man brought the crazy psychotic, which is what I...
It's quite the juxtaposition there. But elegance, grace, psycho.
It's what I loved about the both of them. I'm not even kidding. They were my favorite. For that reason, I wanted to be Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth, like, together. I loved those two personality clashes.
So you loved if they would have ever had a child, you would have hoped to have been said child.
Like, yeah, right? Because, like, who doesn't want that elegance and grace? And then, but she can pop off.
She can. She had especially with the Sherri Martel situation.
Yeah.
She definitely threw down.
Yeah, and, like, looking back at it, like, who doesn't remember the Mega Powers saga?
Really is the greatest love triangle in pro wrestling history.
Like, and she brought so much emotion. She brought all of that to every experience that she was part of. And I think when you look at wrestling and storytelling, you have to get people emotionally. What storylines did you enjoy the most or feel most connected to or want to rewatch over and over again? It's something that you were emotionally attached to, whether it was something that, like, you had experienced, or you're like, no, I know what that's like, or whatever the case is. But I think she brought everything that was required from a manager and a woman in a time, in a place where everything was so male dominated. So, number 5, Miss Elizabeth.
I love that. You're right. It was the greatest love triangle in sports entertainment history as we know it, and it was a love triangle of 2 distinctly different personalities. You had the distrust and the madness of Macho Man, and you had the, again, say your prayers and drink your Ovaltine in Hulk Hogan, right? Eat your spinach, drink your milk, all that kind of stuff. And it definitely does make one wonder, had they stuck with managers, how far Miss Elizabeth would have gone, and would she have jumped to WCW, and would she have eventually hooked up with Luger, and would she have eventually OD'd and passed away on us? So it's an intriguing rabbit hole to go down if the manager role had stayed as vicarious as one would have wanted it to have been as it was in the 80s. Managers were very prolific in the 80s. You had Slick, you had Elizabeth, you had number 4. And number 4 is the greatest import in managerial history. Don't laugh at all. The one and only, the late, great Mr. Fuji. Mr. Fuji was the prolific heel manager next to my number 2, which I gotta wait. I don't want to give it away. I don't want to give away number 2. Number 2 was hands down the prolific heel manager. But this manager and Mr. Fuji did coexist together in a few different aspects. Mr. Fuji's last kind of managerial task was Yokozuna. And he did turn Yokozuna into that champion. And he had the powder. He had everything. He had it all. And even though he managed a lot of racially profiled characters based solely on how he looked, and again, it was a different time. It was a different world than we live in now. But yeah, Mr. Fuji was that manager I loved. I loved the top hat and the cane look. I loved everything, man. And I love how he incorporated some of his, whoever he was managing into his look in terms of things. Like when he was managing Yokozuna, he also rocked the, what's it called?
I don't know what the...
Kimono. Oh. He rocked the kimono. And he looked good in the kimono. Fuji looked good. He looked solid, and he was great. He was a great manager. He made you hate him, but also respect the shit out of him. Oh, I don't know if I could say that. Respect the poop out of him. So for that aspect, which is why, and people may disagree with number 4, just like they disagreed with number 5 last week, and that's okay, because this is all opinionated. But Mr. Fuji, for me, was especially great manager at the time, and I enjoyed it. I mean, we all remember Bret Hart getting the powder, Hogan coming out, looking less steroidy, and beating Yokozuna. And, the eventual tragedy that befall Yokozuna outside of the ring. But regardless, when Fuji and Yokozuna were on the top, they were on the top in a lot of great aspects. So for that, Mr. Fuji holds the number 4 spot. What are you thinking about the Foodster?
The fact that you called him the Foodster is
Foodster.
Crazy work. But I'm not mad at that. When I think of watching wrestling growing up, Mr. Fuji was definitely an icon. He was definitely a staple.
Ahead of his time.
Yeah. And, they used a lot of racial people in a lot of different ways. And, I think... Looking back, we all make the faces. We all are like, oh, my God. But at that time, everybody was locked in.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like when you watch Mr. Magoo cartoons now, doesn't really hold the staple that it did as a kid because you've learned so much about humanity. And you really realize that Mr. Magoo was just a play on horribleness.
I know. It's unfortunate. But for what it was at that time, Mr. Fuji was gold.
All right. So gold. We got 5 and 4 in the can. Miss Elizabeth at 5, Fuji at 4. Who are you bringing to the table for number 3?
So for number 3,
this is where it gets difficult, right? Because when you get into the top 3, you really got to pick and choose.
I know, but it's also where it gets super opinionated, I think, right? Because everybody sees and views things differently. So for number 3, I had to choose somebody that was iconic to me. Somebody that haunted me for quite a while. And when I say that, I mean...
Glacier.
No. If you've listened to the podcast, I mean, for early on in the days, or if you know me personally, you know that I was scared of The Undertaker for quite some time.
Yeah, it was decades, actually. It was decades.
It was a lot of time. For anybody who's new, I'll just give you a brief story of it. My mom has dark curly hair, and when it was wet, she used to flip it over her face and then flip it back and roll her eyes back The Undertaker used to do. And that's how my parents used to get me to do things. That's how they kept me in line. They'd be like, The Undertaker is coming. And I legitimately thought he lived in my closet. Till I was
this choice
double digits.
Well, we all know where you're going with the choice, but I'll let you announce it. But this choice for you is childhood trauma.
A little bit. Maybe this is cathartic in a way for me to release it. But number 3.
Let's go cathartic. Do it up.
Paul Bearer.
Oh, yes!
First of all, from the voice to just his whole persona, just everything about him was very iconic. He had a very chilling presence, and I mean, connection to the supernatural when you think about The Undertaker and then Kane later on. But how do you embody that? As a kid too, right? And watching that, I got terrified, right? That instilled a lot of emotion in me. And to think about his theatrical expression, the urn, him carrying around that freaking urn all the time.
Talking to it. Yeah.
Like, it makes me think of like Al Snow in a way, where he would just talk to Head, and like that was his thing, right?
I was thinking about throwing Head out there as a manager. I was thinking about it. By the way, shameless plug, if you do enjoy Al Snow, I have 2 great conversations with him in the archives of the Straight Talk universe, so go check that out for sure. Oh, and by the way, do got to say, last couple episodes, or the first episode, I missed out doing this, but if you're listening to us on the Huge Pop Hub, welcome. Yeah, like we're here, we're on the hub, we're glad to be here. It's exciting, the fact that you and I are the voice of a generation. And I do want to make this announcement now before we get into my agreement of Paul Bearer, or if you have more to talk about too.
No, I just want to talk about, just touch on his charisma, like very captivating, right? And like when you look at him visually, maybe you wouldn't think that of him, but the way he could hold an audience and advocate for the Undertaker, like he did like the majority of the talking, if not all of it. So, you know, I'd love to hear your thoughts after your announcement.
The announcement is that as much as you love podcasting, it's difficult for you right now. I mean, I have a family, I have a full-time job, I have commentary gigs and all this stuff, but I can find the time. But no, I'm joking. I'm joking. I love you, you know that. It's hard for you right now, and I get it. So you're going to be sprinkled out throughout the show, and then we'll get you more back on a kind of a regular basis once things ease up for you.
Right.
But for right now, you'll be on the first 2 shows. Maybe I could, twist your arm for number 3, and then after that, I'll carry the flag by myself for a little bit. We'll see how that goes. She just rolled her eyes, so I'm not sure if that's going to pan out for number 3. But regardless, I agree with you. So we're going to love to have you back when you can make it, for sure, which will be exciting. Because, I mean, God knows, I can't banter myself. What do you think about Paul Bearer, George? Well, it's interesting you brought that up, George.
You know what? I think that would be a great show. We'll discuss this later.
Me, myself, and I?
Yeah. Have you never seen Joe Rogan versus Ro Jogan?
Oh, God. No. So McKay George versus George Mckay, and it's not going to work. I don't have Joe Rogan's style and charisma. But, I agree with you on charisma. The perfect segue back. I'm amazing. With the charisma of Paul Bearer. And it's sad because Paul Bearer was not really a manager that could branch out. Other than The Undertaker and Kane, there's really nowhere else you could really pinnacle Paul Bearer unless it involved The Undertaker. And a lot of storylines have and did involve The Undertaker for a long while. And that's the only connection that Paul Bearer really had to the wrestling world was through The Undertaker, whatever storylines were going on with The Undertaker. And the introduction of Kane, I would have honestly liked to see them bring more siblings in or more family members in from The Undertaker's past. I would have liked to dive deeper into the past that we never so much got.
Right.
We know Kane was born out of a fire, yada, 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 all these things. But I would have liked a more deeper dive. And my favorite Paul Bearer stuff was when they were looking for the real Undertaker, when there was the fake Undertaker, Ted DiBiase's Undertaker. And Paul Bearer was in the graveyard digging up the Undertaker, talking about how he was going to bring him back, and the loyalty. The loyalty was he was as loyal to Paul Bearer as a dog is to its owner. Like, he was just there. So I love your number 3. But that just means that 1 and 2 really have to blow 3 off the roof, because 3 can easily be shifted to 1.
Yeah, quite easily.
This Paul Bearer could be considered as one of the greatest managers of all time.
Of course.
And now with that being said, number 2 is someone who I admire because I do dabble in the commentary world of the indie wrestling that we have, the great scene we have here in Ontario. And this was a man whose commentary I appreciate because I'm color. I add the color to the commentary when I do it. And there's nobody more prolific as a manager, as a color commentator, as anyone. And arguably you could suggest another great color man being Jesse the Body Ventura, but this is not top 5 commentators. Maybe that's an option for number 3. I like that. That's a good call. But for me, I would say that, Bobby the Brain Heenan is my number 2. And he was everything. My favorite thing about Bobby the Brain Heenan was just the charisma that him and Gorilla had. The back and forth that they had that was so easy. It came so naturally. And also the way, Andre, managing everybody that he did, all the stupid stuff that he did, the bets that he made that screwed him to no avail, getting fired by Gorilla Monsoon. That's another classic. Had his stuff, he got locked out of the building. Like, I look at Bobby the Brain Heenan and what he brought to the table, and even Bobby is prolific for WCW. because Bobby was the voice that we heard when Hogan came out. Bobby said clearly, but where do his loyalties lie? Is he the third man?
That's right.
So he was very prophesizing what we were going to see. And even Eric Bischoff mentioned it in The Rise and Fall of WCW and that great documentary series, the Who Killed WCW. He said that when he heard Bobby say that, at the time he was furio, but then later on he learned to appreciate that that was like the prolific soundbite that we got. Other than, well, if you care about the other product, yada, 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 turn off. Mick Foley wins the title, yeah. So, but we're not getting into commentators, but Bobby did as a manager, and who he managed and who he carried was second to none, in my opinion. And his style, those jumpsuits, he was so Juicy Couture before Juicy Couture was a thing. And he was great. And he was a chameleon in terms of managing. He could manage one person one day, turn on them, and then manage the opponent that he turned on them with, almost to like you never even knew it happened. It was a Mandela effect. Like you forgot that he almost managed this person when he turned his back on them and went to this person. So Bobby was just a great head of hair. Great head of hair, man. I loved it to death. So number 2, I'm locking it in, is Bobby the Brain Heenan.
I like it.
Right.
I like it. I mean, very fitting for number 2. I will say that's a very tough spot. Like, number 2 could go toe to toe with number 1, in my opinion. But for number 2, like I love that. Like, you needed to really keep up to know what he was doing, right? Because you would forget. He was so quick at like looking at this guy and wanting to sway him this way, and then seeing somebody pass him, and then being like, oh no. I got plans for you in 6 months, my friend. Let me plant that seed. He was beautiful at that. And I think the moniker, the Brain, is extremely fitting for Bobby Heenan. Right
on. So you're happy with the number 2, which leaves you the final spot.
I'm sweating.
I mean, after Bobby, first off, we can agree that on this list, even with once your number 1 becomes revealed,
right,
the head of hair goes to Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Oh, for sure.
Honorable mention would be Miss Elizabeth because the curls were rocking.
Oh, gorgeous.
But Bobby the Brain Heenan had herbal essences before herbal essences.
He did have a gorgeous head of hair.
He did. He had a fucking gorgeous head of hair, right?
Yeah.
You want to run your fingers through it.
Yeah.
You did.
There was quite a few of them actually in that time that you were like,
Well, Mr. Fuji didn't have any hair.
Well.
Slick also, most of the time, had a hat on. So you never really saw what he was packing. Sherri, I wouldn't want to run my hair through Sherri's hair.
Oh.
You'd get, like, no, dude.
What about number 1? Well, actually, number 1 didn't have that much.
Number 1 was already losing it when he came into the wrestling world.
But you know what?
Oh, I gave it away. I said it was a he.
That's okay. But he is one of the greatest of all time. Before I even announce his name, like the supernatural ability to just captivate a room of people.
An arena.
Like, is incredible. So without further ado, number 1, my choice for best manager is Paul Heyman.
Paulie Dangerously.
I think that...
the Zach Morris phone would not be susceptible in pro wrestling without Paulie Dangerously. Let's get that out of the way.
For sure. But like, yeah, when I think about Paul Heyman, that's who I see.
You see Paulie Dangerously.
Yeah. I see that leather.
80s.
Yeah, I see that.
The leather tie. You remember the leather ties?
Oh my God, the leather ties.
Oh man, I wish you would have wore a what do they call those Texas bow ties? The
bolo tie.
I wish you would have rocked a bolo tie.
I love a bolo tie. I'm not even
now. Like in this day and age.
You know what? I think if the personality and outfit is like the right person can wear a bolo tie and make
I would not wear a bolo tie. I could not pull off. Well, that's a bolo tie.
Right? I'm looking at Stu Hart right now. He probably could.
Stu Hart's a G.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so, but
he gave us some of the greatest wrestlers of all time. Stu Hart.
He did. Rest in peace.
But let's get back to Paulie Dangerously or Paul Heyman. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman. Do it. Go down the rabbit hole. I'm intrigued.
Dude, I just think that he has the supernatural ability to captivate a room. He elevates anything he's involved in. And he's been involved in so much. And when you think about his whole entire career, when we go to ECW to now, like when he does retire, that induction, and obviously he's already in the Hall of Fame. No worries. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah,
right.
Last year.
So
had the greatest Hall of Fame speech ever.
Exactly, right? We know he's a talker. We know that when he's the mouthpiece for somebody, it is going places. So I just, especially with him working with larger than life personas, right? Like he works with these big name, Brock Lesnar. When I think of Brock Lesnar, it's synonymous. Like I immediately think about Paul Heyman. I think I even said it earlier. Brock Lesnar's theme music is in my head, but all I hear is Paul Heyman's words. Like, he is so embedded into wrestling history. He is embedded into wrestling present day. And I think when we look at managers, and like, it's unfortunate that the others have passed away, and it's, the way I see it is when it's someone's time to go, it's their time to go.
Yeah, when I look at this list, he is the only survivor, the only living member of this top 5.
I didn't realize it until
just now.
Just right now. But I think that even is very symbolic of it all, that he
has outlived everyone else. Outlast, survive?
Oh, don't bring Survivor into it, because...
No, we don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But, I cut you off, so my apologies.
No, continue. That's okay. I just... I don't think I have anything more to say. I think Paul Heyman, the name and the person, speaks for himself. Like, there's not really much more that I can say that everybody else doesn't really know or understand about the guy.
Well, I don't know if I have the sound effect right, but I'm going to push the sound effect button because this is what I think of your number 1 right here. No, not that. No, not that. Not that. Not that. That. Ladies and gentlemen, soak that in. That is hands down. Like, I had a tough task last week with 1, 3, and 5.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, you're like, oh, it's 3 picks. It's easy. It's really not. It's easy for 4 and 2. I feel like a little bit easier because 4 and 2 just have to fill in the spaces.
That's right.
2 has to be good, but I feel like 4 and 5 are picks that, you can kind of massage any which way. But 1, 2, and 5, or 1, 2, and 3, crazy hard. Crazy hard. And I feel like you knocked it out of the park with 3 and with 1. Because I don't know if I had 1, 3, and 5 this week, I don't know who I could have done. Because right off the bat, when we decided we were going to do managers, I told you outside, Fuji and Heyman.
Yeah.
Or Fuji and Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Yeah, you said that
I had both of them right out, and you were like, Fuji. I was like, don't fucking sully Fuji, man. Fuji was amazing. But, when I think of pro wrestling, when I think of the last decade, really, CM Punk, Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, like this is a man, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, go through the archives. I said this years ago. I said this in like 2016. Shut Roman Reigns up, put him with Paul Heyman, and let him go.
Yeah.
And finally, they did. And now I will, like, look, before I would never hang Roman Reigns on my wall. I have a bought and purchased Roman Reigns autograph from a house show. Okay, he is on my wall. And the only reason he is on my wall, straight up, the only reason he is on my wall, 2 words. 2 words for you. Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman made Roman Reigns relevant. Paul Heyman made Samoan wrestling relevant again.
Beautiful.
That's what Paul Heyman did. He took a very long lineage in history.
Yeah. The
last big success being The Rock. And he single-handedly elevated the Samoan dynasty, the tribal chief, all this stuff was elevated through and with and because of Paul Heyman. Don't get me wrong, Roman Reigns played his part.
Of course.
And when you're a talker and you're around someone who doesn't talk, what do they become? They become a talker.
It rubs off.
Roman Reigns has cut some of the best promos of his career with Paul Heyman. The trial of Sami Zayn, that was all Roman Reigns. But I honestly and truly, I want somebody in my life
Yeah.
that looks at Roman Reigns
The way
Paul Heyman does.
Yeah, God, I see what you've done for others.
I'm just saying.
It's me.
I was wondering if, are we going Adele or?
Oh, no. Oh,
yeah, I didn't know where you were going with it.
No, honestly, when I think of Hello, It's Me, I'm sorry, Adele, I love you, but
you think of Lionel?
Yeah, it's always going to be Lionel.
Lionel, but the song was also, the song was play-by-play book of stalking.
The video is he stalks a blind girl.
And then she makes that Beetlejuice looking busk.
Yeah, we're getting off track.
We're getting
here.
way off track.
I'm so sorry.
But no,
guys.
when I think of number one, you knocked it out of the park. So MVP goes to you this week, hands down. Last week the MVP was Kevin Federline. This week the MVP, Michelle, our inaugural podcast back, and I looped in the greatest no-hit wonder of the 2000s. You can't top that last week, but this week you topped it. You did.
Yes.
You're awesome. The knowledge is fantastic, and it sucks that we're not going to be doing this on a regular basis right now because this banter, I don't get this banter with anybody else. So I admire that. So, I'm trying to suck it in. I'm trying to suck it in.
Listen, I get my work schedule for 3 months at a time. I know what my school schedule is like. We can work some stuff out, but it's just so much things that, I need to plan it. If we take time to plan and properly schedule things, then I'll try my darnest to be here as much as I can, for sure.
That's all we can get, ladies and gentlemen. It's on wax. It's here now. It's been recorded.
It's
there. She can't go, because anytime she backs out of something, I just play this recording.
Oh, God.
Okay, and every time you come back on the show, I will give you this.
Huzzah.
Followed by the occasional.
Who doesn't like a dance party?
And then it also, actually, this is pretty cool. It comes with, we're getting off tangent, I don't care.
These are great. I like their
right?
The cheesiness.
Yeah, the cheesiness.
Perfect.
And then the every once in a while. So I can make a dad joke, and you could just lean over and go, right? It would be good times. But back on track, yeah. Paul Heyman, hands down, number one. I think honorable mention. I think we did talk about possibly getting Sherri up on this list.
Yeah.
I just feel like when you look at the career of a Sherri Martel and you look at the career of a Miss Elizabeth, when you think of one that was very synonymous in the early stages of being the ultimate valet, the first lady of pro wrestling,
right, is
Miss Elizabeth.
Absolutely.
And then you look at Mr. Fuji and what he brought to the multiculturalism and the borderline racism of the 80s. You can't not talk about Mr. Fuji, but I really did think Mr. Fuji was impactful.
Yes.
As a presence. He did what a manager did better than anybody else. And then, of course, we have Paul Bearer, which is, again, iconic as the Undertaker character is.
Right.
The fact that his sons were able to accept his ring on his behalf and do what they did for him at the Hall of Fame and do all the quotes they did, and they look just like Dad. Like, if they were to ever to split up, like if Undertaker and Kane had come back for one final feud, I would have given one of them one son and one of them the other son, just to kind of have
amazing,
like the Paul Bearer brothers.
Yeah.
I think like Paul Bearer, such a family man, such a class act, great. And then you got Bobby the Brain Heenan, who is just iconic and synonymous and easily could slide into that number one spot given the day. But number one, you have ultimately, I mean, again, when you put, like we talked about it with Paul Heyman, you put him with a non-talker, like a Roman Reigns. He makes Roman Reigns become a talker.
Right.
But then you put him with a talker like CM Punk, and he makes CM Punk a better talker.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying CM Punk was shit. His talking ability. It
just elevated
it.
Yeah.
And the way he could make Brock Lesnar, even though Brock Lesnar loses 10 pounds just walking down to the ring in sweat, how he could make Brock Lesnar seem like this beast incarnate, this hellhound, is flawless.
He's got that Midas touch. Like, everything he touches turns to gold.
It's money.
Hats off to you, Paul Heyman. I thank you. And
yes, that's the best way to put it. Thank you for being in pro wrestling.
Yeah, I thank you, and I just look forward to seeing you on TV until you decide to, rest and chill at home and retire.
Well, he's kind of got that in between now. He's got a very lax schedule.
But until he's like,
I want to play a game with you right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw out random wrestlers.
Okay.
And you're going to put one of these managers with that wrestler.
Oh, shit. Okay.
And these are wrestlers that never had managers that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So I'm gonna throw out a wrestler. You throw out you only have 5 choices.
5. Okay.
All right. So I'm gonna go because I mentioned him earlier, and I feel like it's hilarious that I mentioned him, and he was actually one of my choices for this game. Glacier. Come on. Who's managing Glacier, dude?
Oh no! Oh God. You know what? Paul Bearer.
Paul Bearer managing Glacier. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Didn't really ever have a manager, but feel like he could have, other than Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart was his only manager, and I'm talking about Bret the Hitman Hart. Bret the Hitman Hart. Get rid of, and Jimmy Hart is also an honorable mention on this list as well, for sure. Get rid of Jimmy Hart, and who out of these 4 remaining choices would you put with Jimmy Hart, or would you put with Bret the Hitman Hart?
Oh, that's tough.
It is tough. It is tough.
That is tough. You know what? I'm gonna go with my gut, and it said Miss Elizabeth.
Miss Elizabeth. Okay, I like that. Miss Elizabeth, Bret the Hitman Hart could have been like a quad triangle. Quad love
I
affair.
think anything that she was involved in, like I think she softened a lot of things, and so like he came from the Hart family, and it's very rough and tough. The dungeon, she would add a little elegance and grace.
I like that. Okay, Billy Kidman.
Okay, so we got Mr. Fuji, Bobby, and Paul.
And Paul Heyman. Billy Kidman.
Okay, we're gonna put him with Bobby Heenan.
I like it. I actually do dig it. I feel like that's got power personified. Yeah. I dig it. I dig it. I do dig it.
I was gonna say Paul Heyman, but I'm like, no, I feel like the brain.
Ahmed Johnson.
Paul Heyman.
Okay. Ahmed Johnson goes with Paul Heyman.
Yeah.
And last but not least, somebody for Mr. Fuji. And I feel like this one, I don't know if you left the best choice on the table for this one.
I know.
But I'm going to go ahead and throw this name out, and a lot of people will laugh because he did have a manager. But I wonder what this pairing would have looked like. Adam Bomb. He had a Harvey Whippleman.
Yes.
But I wonder, would Adam Bomb have become iconic if he had Mr. Fuji walking out with him?
Mr. Fuji, if anything, again, like Paul Bearer, was loyal. Like you even mentioned it. A lot of his outfits matched who he was managing at the time. He really like tried to match that energy, and like it's the thing I love about like tag teams is like, you know, they got to kind of balance each other out, or they got to be a unit, right? Mm-hmm. And so he was down to be a unit.
So he would have fit in with Adam Bomb perfectly.
I think he would have done what was necessary.
I just wonder what Ahmed Johnson and Paul Heyman would look like.
I don't know. I panicked.
But I think the best choice that you made was, I do like Bret Hart with Miss Elizabeth. I think that could work.
Yes.
But I also like Billy Kidman with Bobby the Brain. It's intriguing to me.
Right?
Like, would he get rid of the wife beater and the jean shorts, the jorts? Like, don't forget it. People forget that Billy Kidman had the jorts before Stina.
Icon. You know what? I would hope not. I think, you know what I think? I think in the beginning, not really, but I think Bobby would tell Kidman, like, you know, image does come into play. And so let's clean it up a little bit. Like, you can be rough and tough, but there are times where you need to Razor Ramon it up, baby.
Oh, yeah. I come in here, you get the food, you expect the bad guy to pay. All right, without further ado, this one is in the can. We're locking it in. And I don't know if you're going to be here for number 3, but I'm going to go ahead and make the announcement for number 3 because I was thinking about this earlier today.
Okay.
And we talked a lot about this particular part, and I don't think this is a part that gets enough credit. So I'm going to go with top 5 commentators.
Amazing. I already have my number 2.
Oh, you already have your number 2?
Yeah.
So are you saying that you will be back for episode 3?
I want to be because I really want to talk about this person. Okay, because it'll be controversial.
Let's get off the recording. Let's end this recording now with a bon voyage. We don't know where you got to go, but listen to another podcast because we're off. We're done. We're finished for today. You can get us exclusively on the Hub, and you can catch these recordings again on YouTube. I know recordings don't do too well on YouTube, but hey, whatever. We're gonna do it up the best way we can.
Yeah.
So as always, I'm the host, your boy George Mckay, and this is the VOR, the voice of reason. Ooh. Michelle Araujo, saying peace, love, and wrestling.
Yeah.
And we will see you guys, or you'll hear us next week.
Take care, guys.